Hi, good morning to our Zoom and Facebook Live participants. I am Jela Rapol, Latran DBA student, your host for today. Before we start for this morning webinar, we would like to request everyone to join us in the opening prayer and the singing of the Philippine National Anthem to be followed by the recitation of the Trans Vision and Mission Statement.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dearest God, our loving Lord, to you we direct our praise and prayer as Creator of the world, as Giver of life. More than 400 years ago, upon Las Islas de Filipinas, our beloved country, it pleased you to establish Colegio de San Juan de Letran as haven for the poor, as seedbed of saints, as cradle of heroes, as school dedicated to the teaching of truth and the learning of life. Even beyond our jubilee, bind us to our oath as your knights, without fear in the face of enemies, brave and upright in the love of God, always truthful, even unto death, defenders of the helpless, doers of good. May the blessings you shall bestow upon us lead us to serve your people and return to you in thanks eternal. Through the pleas of Mary, in the name of Jesus, Arriba. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Isap ng watawat mo'y ay nananginigin. Ang bituin na araw niya kailan abay di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng malakit pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya ng may mga akin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
San Juan de Letran, Mission and Vision. Letran Mission. We are Colegio de San Juan de Letran. We are a Catholic school committed to Dominican preaching through education towards the integral formation of the human person in the noble tradition of knightly excellence, with a special devotion to Mary, according to the ideal of Deus, Patria, Letran. Vision. Ariba spirit towards 2022. We shall raise the awareness, efforts, and standards of Letran Manila as a reputable school of quality education that is centered on the Dominican community that preaches Christ, that offers programs in academics, research, community service that are responsive and responsible to the nation, that forms Letranites who are ready for a relevant role in the world.
To Reverend Father Stephen Marilaja, Letran Vice President for Religious Affairs, Dr. Emmanuel Lopez, Dean of Letran Graduate School, to Letran administrators, faculty members, employees, distinguished speakers, invited guests, and fellow Letranites. A pleasant morning to all of you. I am Ken Iyog, a DBA student of Letran Graduate School, your co-host of today's webinar entitled Bouncing Back, Reimagining, Renewing, and Rebuilding Amidst Pandemic Disruption. This webinar is brought to you by the Letran DBA students under the graduate seminar class, the Manila Times as our official media partner, PTC Aviation Training Center, Astoria Culinary and Hospitality Institute, Top Serve, and Sancelo Fragrance. For today's webinar, we invited 4 renowned speakers to share their expertise on 4 topics as follows: outlook of trade and industry in the Philippines, reimagining, emerging creative industries, renewing, business resiliency and future-proofing, and rebuilding, business leaders' outlook. We believe that this webinar would enrich your knowledge about the importance of resilience, both in the macro and micro perspective, and your learnings here can be applied to your work, studies, or even to your own businesses. To formally open this webinar, may we call on our dynamic Dean of the Letran Graduate School, Dr. Emmanuel Lopez, for his welcome remarks.
To our distinguished guest speakers, Honorable Ramon Lopez, Secretary of the Department of Trade and Industry, Honorable Christopher de Venecia, 4th District Representative of the Province of Pangasinan, Mr. Alfredo Pascual, President, Management Association of the Philippines, Dr. Sergio Cao, President, Chief Academic Officer, Manila Taytana Colleges, Dr. B.D. Salonga, Professor in charge of the course, dear students, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Approximately 2 years ago, we were all caught flat-footed by an unknown predator that rocked what used to be our normal flow of life and extended to what seems to be an eternity of misery to both our academic and physical and economic life. Our 2-year battle against the dreaded pandemic, despite our struggle, has brought out the best in us and has characterized what resiliency was all about. The past 2 years of our efforts, we have literally risen from the grave and gave credence to the term called resiliency. Webster defines resiliency as the ability of something to return to its original size and shape after being compressed or deformed. It may also be defined as an occurrence of rebounding or springing back. Many economic authorities admired and described Filipinos as one of the most resilient, if not the most resilient people in this world. Perhaps this is brought about by our experiences and our never-ending effort to make our life better, not only for our family, but for our country as well. Despite being classified as a third world country, we managed to keep track with technology and innovation and boast of labor force that is classified as one of the best in the world. We have been through several calamities and managed to survive unscathed, including one of the worst in our time, the COVID-19 pandemic. The past 2 years of this pandemic and the slow recovery that we are experiencing leaves more questions than answers. Are we still capable of going back to the pre-pandemic status? What is at stake if we are to venture into the new normal? Is the COVID-19 disease here to stay? These and a host of other business potential and questions concerning our resiliency to rise through the challenges will be discussed in today's webinar. Friends and students, welcome to this very informative and timely discussion. Thank you and good day.
Thank you, Dean Lopez, for that wonderful opening. It will surely set the tone for the rest of this webinar. Now, may we call on Sir Dante Ang to introduce our keynote speaker.
Thank you, Ken. Ramon M. Lopez is the Secretary of the Department of Trade and Industry. His extensive government experience with the Presidential Management Staff, PTI, and the National Economic Development Authority in the early part of his career, followed by over 2 decades of extensive positions in a private corporation, provided him with a solid background in macroeconomy and industry and business development that allowed him to adopt a more holistic perspective on trade and industry development. He's also a strong advocate for free entrepreneurship education for 12 years until he was called to serve the country again under President Rodrigo Roa Duterte's administration as DTI Secretary. He has received several awards, such as the 2016 Nation Builders Award for Government Service for his role as prime mover in micro, small, and medium enterprise development, and the Philippine Innovation Man of the Year Award in 2017 for the promotion of social entrepreneurship through innovation. In 2018, he received from President Duterte the Order of Secretuna with a rank of Datu, one of the senior honors one can receive in the Philippines. Just recently, he was also named by People Asia as one of the 2020 People of the Year for his efforts in gradual, safe, and calibrated reopening of the economy amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Let me just say also that Secretary Lopez has been probably one of the most unassuming public servants I have met, always a champion of entrepreneurship. Secretary Lopez, our pleasure is to give you the screen this morning. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much, Mr. Dante Klink, for that very kind introduction. I must mention also that I am a Dominican by heart, benefiting from the Dominican education in my grade school and high school days. Allow me to extend my greetings to our very good friend and strong partner in the creative sector, Congressman Christopher Toth Villaseña, Reverend Father Clarence Victor Marquez, the Rector and President of Colegio de San Juan de Letran, of course, Professor and Dean Emmanuel Lopez, Mr. Dante Klink Ang, the Chairman and CEO of Manila Times, Ms. Bianca Mercado, also of the Manila Times, Dr. Sergio Cao, the President of Manila Taytana Colleges, Mr. Alfredo Fred Espal, the President of the Management Association of the Philippines. Sa ating mga kasama po studying in Letran, the professors and faculty of Letran, distinguished guests and members of the academe, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you po for this opportunity to share with you this morning our economic outlook for the country in 2022, which are the result of various economic measures and the way forward, especially as we continue to see the tail end of the pandemic and the full reopening of the economy. As mentioned by Dr. Lopez, after almost exactly 2 years since the start of our series of inevitable but calculated lockdowns, we are finally seeing, hopefully, the end of the worst global pandemic of our time. We started with a lot of uncertainties, especially on the severity of COVID, the speed of transmission.
Harry, I think they pressed mute. Can you, sorry about that. There you go.
Okay.
We lost you for about 2 seconds.
Okay. Sige. Thank you. So I was saying that, well, at the start, we started with a lot of uncertainty, especially on the severity of the COVID. That was about 2 years ago. The speed of transmission, the challenge to our healthcare system. But I can say that as we look back, we did very well in terms of being able to manage the spread of COVID, the number of cases, and the number of deaths as percentage of the population as compared to other countries around us, and those compared with bigger economies. And yet, our economy started to recover fast since last year. With God's grace, we can say that we are able to balance protecting lives and livelihood. The whole of nation approach, the bayanihan spirit, the cooperation from most of our kababayans, and the relatively high level of vaccination program, together with, I may say, the early spread of Omicron, help improve protection and natural immunity of the population. Presently, our country has already administered more than 139 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines nationwide, and more than 64 million Filipinos fully vaccinated, representing over 62% of targeted population, and more than 11 million of them having received booster shots. COVID cases remain low at an average of only 600 cases daily the past week. And at this rate, it looks like we will remain on alert level 1 until the end of this Duterte administration. As we worked on the early but gradual reopening of our economy since the late 2020, we saw the immediate improvement in our economy. That is why I say that our economic fundamentals are quite strong and responsive to any reopening, because it immediately translated to recovery in all the economic data. The Philippine GDP posted a growth of 7.1% in the third quarter and 7.7% in the fourth quarter of 2021. Ending with a full-year GDP growth rate of 5.6%, surpassing the government target of 5%. This is also among the highest GDP growth rates in ASEAN and the East Asian region. On the production side, the industry sector expanded by 8.2%, while the services sector grew by 5.3%. On the expenditure side, growth was primarily driven by household consumption, which grew by 7.5% and accounted for 5.2% percentage points of overall GDP growth. This strong rebound points to improving consumer confidence. With this momentum, we can reach our target GDP growth of 6 to 7% for the year 2022 and surpass the 2019 pre-pandemic GDP level of 19.4 trillion pesos after 2 years in the pandemic. Philippine economic managers have projected a 7 to 9% growth even. But this will depend on how long the Ukraine-Russia conflict will last. The Philippine manufacturing sector, likewise in the latest report of the IHS market, posted the highest purchasing managers index or PMI in the 3 years of 52.8 last month, following month-on-month output growth unseen in previous months. We are in the top 3 in ASEAN, and as you know, any number above 50 means growth in manufacturing. Our merchandise exports likewise started out strong this year, reflecting an increase of 8.9%, amounting to $6 billion last January, and even surpassing 2020 pre-pandemic level by 4.16%. These numbers exemplified continuous growth actually for the past 11 months, since March of 2021. Meanwhile, our merchandise exports closed the year 2021 with a 14.5% growth, with value reaching $74.6 billion. This is 14.5% higher than in 2020 and 7% higher than the pre-pandemic average from 2017 to 2019. Notably, 27 exported commodity groups covering 87.8% of total exports have already breached pre-pandemic export levels. We can say that the export sector has recovered well. Another sector that surpassed pre-pandemic levels is the net foreign direct investments, or FDI. For the full year 2021, it reached $10.5 billion, really at a very high level, 54.2% higher than the $6.8 billion recorded for 2020. Equity capital placement were sourced mainly from Singapore, Japan, US, and the Netherlands. And these were channeled mainly to the manufacturing, electricity, gas, steam, and air conditioning, in financial and insurance and real estate industries. And of course, I have to mention that this number, the $10.5 billion FDI that we reached last year, not only 54% higher than 2020, but 42 or 41.8% higher than pre-pandemic level as well. So we can say that exports, FDI, are sectors that have recovered back to their pre-pandemic levels. In terms of unemployment rate, just about, I think yesterday or the other day, the country's unemployment rate already went down to 6.4% from the high of 17.6% in 2020 at the start of the lockdowns. This translates to 2.93 million unemployed Filipinos, projecting a decline of 1.04 million from the 3.96 million unemployed reported in January of last year. The unemployment rate improved despite the increase to 45.9 million in the country's labor force that are above 15 years old, compared to the 45.2 million Filipinos in the labor force in the same period of last year. In terms of the current conflict between Ukraine and Russia, note that our trade with both Ukraine and Russia combined is only 0.49, or about 0.5% of our total trade with Ukraine and Russia, or compared to our total trade worldwide. The Ukraine and Russia rank 48 and 27th respectively as our trading partners, and thus have minimal direct economic impact. However, while there would be minimal direct impact, the disruption in the global commodity supply chain and prices will be the factor that would pose uncertainty to all countries. The Russia-Ukraine crisis will have a temporary impact on commodities because of the world oil price hike, which is a threat to our growth momentum. However, we are confident that our current growth trajectory will be sustained through various measures to strengthen the economy and enable it to weather the storm. Of course, our wishful thinking and fearless forecast, UK-Russia conflict will be short-lived with a peaceful resolution that will pressure on commodity will subside, especially now that there is a very strong international pressure on Russia to end the aggression. Back on the local front, the good news is that both houses of Congress have recently passed the amended Public Service Act. This is scheduled to be signed on Monday, and once President Rodrigo Duterte signs the bill into law, foreign equity restrictions in key sectors will be eased from a maximum 40% to 100% foreign equity. This shall attract more global players that will modernize several sectors, such as in telecommunications, shipping, air carriers, railway, and subways. Similarly, there will be increased competition in terms of services and products, which will generate competitive pricing to the benefit of the consumers. Recall our usual complaints on weak telecom signal, the speed of internet, and the cost of internet data in the country. Those issues will be addressed with more players in the sector. Likewise, we are also working on opening up to 100% instead of 40% the foreign equity for renewable energy, such as solar, wind, tidal, the sources of energy that are inexhaustible. And we will do this through the amendments to Republic Act number 9513, the Renewable Energy Act of 2008 IRR. So we'll be amending the implementing rules of regulation. Similarly, the amended Retail Trade Liberalization Act and the Foreign Investment Act, which have been recently signed by President Rodrigo Duterte, are expected to establish reforms to remove the barriers to foreign entry. We will expect more players and competition in the retail and technology sectors. For example, for retail alone, many of our micro SMEs will have more and easier access to market their products as more retailers will bring down their listing fees and entry costs in making the MSME products available in the shelves of the retailers. With the lowering of the foreign equity or the threshold in the Foreign Investment Act, and basically to allow investment levels for foreign-owned, technology-oriented startups. The Philippines can also be a second home for international startup firms involved in advanced technology with a capital requirement of only $100,000 and only 15 employees from the local workforce. Additionally, the Philippines has preferential access in major markets through our FTAs or free trade agreements. We continue to benefit from the EU's Generalized Scheme of Preferences, or what is more known as EU GSP+, and we are the only nation in ASEAN to do so. Likewise, we are currently working to push for more products to be included in the talks for the US GSP, which is under discussion for renewal. These add to the value of making Philippines as a manufacturing location for our products, as products manufactured in the country can enter this GSP market at 0% duty. The Philippines is also part of the much talked about RCEP, or Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which is intended to create in the region a more business-friendly environment. We hope to ratify this RCEP very soon. RCEP will likewise encourage closer integration of economies and provide a more stable and predictable rules-based system of trade. And amidst the pandemic, the Philippines has also been proactive in enhancing strategic, bilateral, and regional relations with other trade partners, like the continuation of the Philippine-EU FTA monitoring missions and the recent conclusion of the negotiation for the Philippine-South Korea FTA. We are also entering into a negotiation with the UAE for a comprehensive economic partnership agreement, and we are to sign, hopefully by this month or next month, the investment promotion and protection agreement with UAE as well. In order to make the investment climate in the Philippines significantly more attractive, we have the CREATE Act. And this rationalizes and modernizes and offers more relevant incentives to investors. This also will reduce or has reduced the corporate income tax rate from 30% to 25% for large corporations and down to 20% for micro SMEs. We want to attract a higher level of technology in the industry sectors, such as in electronics, aerospace, and automotive. So that's the reason why we are giving more favorable terms and incentives to those industries with high technology and entice more FDIs in that particular field. All these are aligned with Ambition 2040 of the NEDA and the Pagtanaw 2050 with respect to science and technology roadmap. And these are our country's long-term aspirations, where we need to encourage investments in priority sectors that have direct impact on people's aspirations. Guided by our Inclusive Innovative Industrialization Framework, the Strategic Investment Priorities Plan, SIPP, under the CREATE law, identifies industries for the grant of incentives to attract high-value, modern, and sustainable high technology projects that will strengthen our participation in the global value chain, create more jobs, and further sharpen the Philippines' competitiveness in the global market. The length of incentives that would be offered to corporations or investors will depend on the tier classification based on their levels of technology and location, especially those located far from urban centers. Just recently, the Fiscal Incentives Review Board, the FIRB, has approved the SIPP, which will serve as the primary basis for determining which projects or activities will be eligible for fiscal incentives. Allow me to present briefly the framework for strategic promotion of investments. Tier 1 will focus on those rebuild programs, and that means those revitalizing businesses, investments, livelihoods, and domestic demand. And we can refer also to the IPP of the BOI, that's the Investment Promotion Plan of the BOI, for the preferred listing, exports, and other special laws that will be eligible for fiscal incentives. We identify other key sectors that should be given extra incentives, extra support. These would be under Tier 2 to build competitive and resilient economy. This will include the sectors that will basically fill in the value chain gaps critical in promoting like green ecosystems, ensuring a dependable health system, achieving a robust self-reliance in defense systems, and transforming into modern, competitive, and resilient industries and agriculture sector. And then Tier 3 will be for the accelerated transformation of the economy with the aim of global leadership in emerging industries in R&D, like the breakthrough in science and health, the generation of new knowledge and intellectual property, or the commercialization of patents, industrial designs, copyrights, highly technical manufacturing, and those critical to the structural transformation and industry revolution of the economy. You will notice that Tier 2 and Tier 3 are also follows the acronym of CREATE. And as mentioned, under Tier 2, these are the activities that fill in the gaps in the value chain, or those that are, in effect, import competing. So we have there the green ecosystems, including the green metals, EV assembly, EV components, and EV infrastructure, including also renewable energy and the like. Health and health systems, including manufacturing in the support of vaccine self-reliance program, the medicines, and thus even specialty hospitals, products and services related to and in support of the Department of National Defense self-reliance defense posture, and projects also to fill in the industrial value chain gaps, including integrated steel mill, integrated textile mill, a wire rod plant, or a green metals processing. This includes products and services critical to competitively ensuring food security and resilience, as endorsed also by departments like the DA, Department of Agriculture, Grass to Glass Dairy Project, hybrid rice, corn seed production, ASF vaccine manufacturing, or the manufacture of nano fertilizers, biostimulants, and organic soil amendments. The Tier 3, as mentioned, are the high-tech projects. So it covers areas that will promote innovation, those critical to structural transformation. So this includes, even in agriculture, the smart agriculture and biotechnology, smart manufacturing for the industry sector, the infusion of AI and robotics, aerospace, new products and innovation, IP and R&D commercialization, knowledge-intensive services, and the like. We have also the RA 10697, or the Strategic Trade Management Act, which provides regulations for companies that intend to engage in the trade of strategic goods that require regulation and control for security reasons or due to international agreements.
Please mute your microphones, please. Ms. AUP Department, please mute your microphone.
Okay, hello. So the Philippines has been recognized as the most improved country in adoption and implementation of strategic trade controls, boosting its total rank in the Peddling Peril Index from 86 in 2020 to 49, a big jump in 2021, out of 200 countries. Now, allow me to briefly discuss our updated priority industries and a brief description of the markets. So, respect to the IT BPM, the Philippines is well known for this sector. We are consolidating our global leadership in IT-enabled services through the provision of analytical and AI skills development, competitive enabling environment, cost efficiencies, and the close cultural proximity to an international client, ensuring that investors can profitably serve international and fast-growing regional markets. With a 13% share of the global market, And in 2019, this has increased to 15% share in the global market in 2020. The Philippines IT BPM sector is the second largest in the world. During the pandemic, it was one of the sectors that had no layoffs, but instead continued to hire personnel. The industry is also expected to grow 8%, and export revenue is expected to hit $29 billion or even more this year. Meanwhile, the Philippines electronics industry is host to about 500 global semiconductors and electronics companies. Electronics accounts for 62% of our total exports. So they're really a huge sector. And the Philippines is already an indispensable part of the electronics global value chain and is a center of excellence for electronic manufacturing services. We are particularly strong in test, packaging, and assembly of semiconductors. What's more, we are ready to become the home of competitive integrated circuit or IC design companies serving customers worldwide, and thanks to our growing pool of IC design engineers. On automotive, the Philippine automotive industry is already integrated with major global value chains. We have an extensive auto supply chain comprising of over 380 parts manufacturers, coupled with the strength of our die and mold, electronics, and IT BPM sectors. We can respond quickly to the changes in this fast-moving market. In relation to this, we have a developing electric vehicle industry. The Philippines EV ecosystem is composed of 54 manufacturers and importers, and the industry has about 72,000 direct and indirect employment. And we are positioning in the battery supply chain, gathering key partners globally while developing our local capabilities. We are positioning Philippines as a regional manufacturing hub for EV and EV parts in ASEAN. We recognize that the future of transportation will be autonomous, connected, and electric. And again, this is one sector we want to develop and give our full support in terms of incentives. Because of the need to accelerate less fuel-based transportation systems due to the ongoing oil price crisis, we are also adjusting our strategies to allow faster entry of e-vehicles and hybrids. And we presented this to the President about 2 weeks ago by lowering the tariff rates for e-vehicles from 30% to 0% for a limited period of about maybe 3 years, so that we can encourage the entry of e-vehicles in the country, encourage also the shift to these vehicles, and therefore encourage the development of the e-vehicle ecosystem, such as the setting up of more charging stations. Moving on to the next sector, the Philippines is one of the world's richly endowed countries in terms of mineral resources. Around 9 million hectares, or 30% of the country's total land area, has mineral potential. Among these are the so-called green metals that are used in the production of electric vehicle batteries. So these are nickel, copper, and cobalt. At present, only around 2.55% of the total land area is covered by mining tenements. And this goes to show that we have yet to realize the full potential of the industry. And this poses a big opportunity for responsible mineral exploration and extraction. Furthermore, the Philippines is aggressively positioning itself in the battery segment through the country's rich mineral reserve. And the Philippines has a vast resources of green metals, as mentioned, nickel and cobalt, which are key inputs for battery manufacturing. Talking of nickel, well, of course, we're a major source of nickel worldwide. We rank 6th in nickel reserves and 2nd in nickel production. With regard to the country's copper industry, Philippines is home to an estimated 1.1 billion metric ton of copper reserves, reputed to be among the highest in the world, and it fuels the global copper industry. The industry has an estimated value of more than $2 billion of annual copper products exports. But more than just raw material exporting, we want to establish a downstream copper industry in the Philippines, and we envision a fully integrated Philippine copper industry. Again, copper is really a major component when you talk of semiconductor wiring and that would also be needed in e-vehicles as well as for electric vehicle batteries. Our country's digital landscape makes it an ideal setting also to support the growth of hyperscalers. Last year, we launched a campaign highlighting the Philippines as the next strategic hyperscaler hub in the Asia-Pacific region. Only yesterday, we launched the expansion of the PLDT hyperscaler data center in Santa Rosa, Laguna. There is also a growing interest of data center operations in the Philippines. The Philippines data center market poses tremendous potential with only 94 megawatt capacity from existing data centers that is expected to host the growing cloud services demand. So the Philippine enterprise spending on cloud services is expected to rise from $1.8 billion in 2020 to about $2.6 billion in 2024, according to global data. The Philippines' digital landscape also makes it an ideal setting for telco infrastructure and services. Our digital enterprises fill the void left by the brick-and-mortar businesses that were affected by the community lockdowns the past 2 years. Online retail, delivery services, online entertainment, digital services, telehealth, work-from-home arrangements, digital payments, all this helped us in the past year and continue to do so until now. According to the latest digital report, the Philippines remained the top country in social media and internet usage worldwide. With 89 million active social media users, the Philippines ranked 6th in Facebook, 10th in YouTube, 11th in Twitter, and 18th in Instagram. According to one aggressive data center developer, the Philippines ranks 2nd in terms of data center growth in Southeast Asia. We are excited to be a first mover in new market where we see our customers are investing heavily, according to the investor. They are also setting up their 3rd hyperscale campus, and that will be their largest to date. At present, the Philippines is assisting, or specifically DTI and BOI, Board of Investment, we are assisting about 11 companies that are into hyperscalers and data center operations with a total estimated project cost of 147 billion pesos. Among these, 5 are from the US, 2 data center projects with a capacity of, huge, 150 to 180 megawatts, or an estimated project cost of over $2 billion. With these reforms, we strongly express our desire to cultivate and strengthen partnership with our neighboring countries. We are proud to say that Filipinos represent the youngest workforce among the 5 founding members of ASEAN, with a median age of 25.7 years old. Indonesia and Malaysia would have a median age of 30.2 years, Singapore 42.5 years old, and Thailand 39 years old. This simply means that there are more productive years ahead of our workforce, creating a vibrant workforce pool that is not present in many countries, and increasing the income-generating capacities that will serve as the backbone of our fast-growing consumer and investment ecosystem, thus propelling the country to a faster pace of growth in the years ahead. Indeed, our country has bounced back better from the pandemic disruption and even surpassed our pre-pandemic level in many aspects of growth. This reminds me of what our President, Rodrigo Roa Duterte, has said at the beginning of the year, that 2022 will give us Filipinos a fresh start and an opportunity to aim higher and do things better. So thank you once again to the Colegio de San Juan de Letran, the Manila Times, President Klink, for this webinar. Indeed, greater things are in store for us in 2022 and beyond. Let us work together as we build back better towards a new and better normal. Maraming salamat po sa inyo lahat at mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Thank you very much, Secretary Lopez, for that very informative presentation. We are glad that the future is bright with regards to Philippine trade and industry. So now, we will open the floor for questions from our participants. write down also your questions. Okay.
Secretary, maybe I can kick things off, if you don't mind.
Yes, Sir Clink. Okay.
Secretary, you mentioned the US GSP is up for renewal. I was just wanting to ask, what are the major points that you'd like to see changed as you negotiate the renewal? And also if the Philippines is working on other GSP arrangements with other countries.
Oh, thank you. Excellent points, President Kling. For the GSP, especially with the US, our intention, aside from the renewal, is to be able to add more sectors that will benefit from the GSP. For instance, just recently, we were able to add travel goods. In other words, travel goods that includes bags, luggages, and all the things, accessories necessary for travel, can now avail of the zero duty entry into the US market. Footwear is not yet included in the GSP, and that is one sector that we are lobbying to be included. And there are other exportable items that we wish to be included. As far as to the other part of the question, I believe that so far it's only EU and US that are providing GSP concessions to their trade partners. The other countries, what we're trying to do is to add more FTA arrangements, that's free trade agreement, or if they're not ready for a wide range partnership or trading arrangement, we can limit it to tariff arrangements. So we call it preferential trade arrangements, limited to tariff. And that is what we're doing with India now, because India was not able to join RCEP. So right after that, we initiated the talks towards a possible PTA or preferential trading arrangement with India.
So, last question for me. You mentioned RCEP, and you have been repeatedly calling for the ratification, especially since it went into effect in January. Are you hopeful that maybe when Congress reconvenes for that short window before the next government, that it will be on the agenda? And if not, what are the consequences?
So you're right. We've been really wanting to have this ratified before the Senate went on recess. But we remain hopefully still within this Congress, so that this will form part of the legacy of President Duterte. And President Duterte really has mentioned that he would like the Senate hopefully to ratify this during the current senators' time. Before the change in administration. So there is that window from May 23 after election, I think about 2 weeks window.
Yes.
And hopefully, so what we're doing right now is we're working hard, trying to give a briefing also with each of the senator that would still have questions, because I think that's the concern of about maybe close to 7 or 8 senators that would still want to study further RCEP. And we've given many materials and have offered, individual briefings for them. So hopefully we'll be able to finish those so that we can have this ratified when they resume on May 23 onwards.
Yeah, and if they don't ratify, you said before that we could see a 2 to 3% jump in GDP if we ratified it. Is there still a chance to realize that this year?
Yes, there's still a chance to realize that. But if we delay further, then that will be more difficult. And as you know, the main concern here is, imagine if Philippines will be the only country that has not ratified RCEP. All the other participating countries will get to enjoy already the faster trade, and investors will move into those countries. They will skip Philippines because when they know that if they invest in those participating countries, they have better access in the RCEP market, which is about 1/3 of the world's trade size. Philippines will be left behind, frankly. And even those markets that we already have, meaning we're already, let's say, the largest banana exporter to, let's say, Korea or other countries, we might even erode or lose that. Our market share will be eroded because we'll be surpassed, overtaken by other countries in supplying those markets. That is the seriousness of this. Not only losing investors, but even market shares that we have will even erode and
Wow.
overtaken by other countries.
I hope the 7 senators are listening. Michael, I think we need to give a chance to others who might want to ask a question kung meron.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Sir Dante, and thank you for answering the question, Secretary Lopez. So we have a question here coming from Manila Taytana Colleges, from Miss Angeli Visconde. COVID-19 pandemic changed the traditional workplace. What should companies do now, and how do we modernize the traditional work arrangement? Thank you.
Thank you. Very true. Really, the pandemic has shown us that some alternative work arrangements, especially work from home, has been very, I guess, helpful in the efficiencies. We all, like right now, we're in a virtual mode. It's very efficient for us to conduct webinars, even at the workplace. Of course, we're applicable, like office work. Work from home definitely is a game changer. So that will really form part of the way we do business, the way we work. So there will continue to be alternative work arrangements, and there will still be work from home, or even in light of the current oil crisis, as Ned also suggested, even probably a 4-day work week. You know, frankly, work from home might be even better because you spread the number of hours of work and not lump them into the 4 days. But just the same, you're still able to work even remotely, while you're at home. So we see that the hybrid work will continue, whether that's 80-20, 80 physical, 20 virtual, or different ratios, 60-40, and etc. But for companies that are in the ecozone, and this is where we had some recent discussion, there is a requirement for them to be physically within the ecozone. And that's a different issue altogether. And that's the reason why we have been asking them to go back to, physically within the zone. But there are avenues, in the future that they can register outside the ecozone system, and so that they will be more flexible when it comes to adopting a work from home arrangement in their operation.
Thank you, sir, for that answer, sir. For the last question, sir, we have a high trade deficit last December and January. I think one of the highest po. Is this a major concern or not?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the first part.
Sir, we have a high trade deficit last December and January. I think one of the highest po. Is this a major concern or not?
Well, trade deficit is a concern. It's just that the Philippines, for many decades already, the industry structure is such that we also rely on imports for our inputs to production. So take note that the deficit is not caused only by consumer goods, but really intermediate goods. And this is really part of the globalization process. So you will actually notice this when the pandemic struck and production levels went down. Imports went down faster, because there's lack of production or slowdown in the production, especially during the early days of the pandemic. And that just shows that we are really, part of the global structure that we have, the global value chain that we are part of. We import, we export. That is happening heavily. And the industry structure so far is one that has basically high import compared to the export. So that is the reason why in my past 6 years, we've been pushing for the growth of local, increasing manufacturing capacities. Because if you are able to do all those things locally, the domestic content of our production will be higher. In other words, we will rely less on imports. That's the reason I presented earlier in the SIPP, there is Tier 2 that emphasizes import competing industries. In other words, rather than import the textile, why not do a modernized textile company here? The way it goes right now, Ever since, this is quite a long story on industrialization history. Since about the 90s and the 2000s, when we started to globalize and reduce all tariffs, essentially all these intermediate industries were faced with huge competition. In other words, the industry sector, to be able to be import competing, you have to be competitive. Otherwise, our industry will also suffer, being forced to buy local if the costs are higher. And as the theory of globalization works, it is said that sometimes the imported inputs are much lower in cost to make our user industry more competitive, to be able to export. So these are all connected. So what we have to do moving forward, even in the next administration, they should continue our effort to increase manufacturing capacity. Because if the growth continues and your domestic capacity is not able to catch to the requirement of the growth, you will invite more imports to fill that up, to fill up the gap. So that's the reason why sincere, aggressive effort to promote manufacturing capacity should be number one, should be a key agenda. And we're able to do this through these incentives. And hopefully, the next administration, the next budget, will give more budget to DTI for actual support to the manufacturing sector. That is what we don't have right now. We are just able to support the industry through fiscal incentives. The incentive support, but the actual support that we're giving to the agriculture sector, agriculture, they're supported in fertilizers, in seed, mechanization, etc. In the industry, there's none. No support of that. So we need that kind of even budgetary support to support the competitiveness of our industry, to expand capacity, be competitive, and be able to export more than we import. Sorry for that short answer.
It's okay, sir. So thank you very much, Secretary Lopez, for answering the questions of our participants. At this juncture, sir, on behalf of the organizing class of this webinar, we would like to express our appreciation by presenting this digital certificate to Secretary Ramon Lopez. So let me read the contents, sir. Colegio de San Juan de Letran, Office of the Graduate School presents this certificate to Secretary Ramon M. Lopez for imparting his insight as guest speaker in Bouncing Back, Reimagining, Renewing, and Rebuilding Amidst Pandemic Disruption, held today at the Colegio de San Juan de Letran, Manila. Given this 19th of March in the year of our Lord 2022, signed by Associate Professor Emmanuel Lopez, Dean of the Graduate School, and Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Cristina Cabral. And sir, thank you so much, and may we request a photo ops also from you?
Okay. Salamat po, Mr. Jonel, Mr. Ken Iyog, and of course, to Dean Lopez, Professor Cabral, and of course to Clink and our partners. Salamat po for the invitation. An honor and a privilege.
Thank you very much, sir.
Once again, thank you very much, Secretary Ramon Lopez, for lending us your expertise and time. Okay, the actual certificate and special tokens of our appreciation will be delivered to your officer. Thank you very much.
Salamat po. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, so now we move on to our next speaker. So to introduce the second speaker, may I call on Mr. Michael Monreal.
Hello, good morning to each and everyone. It is an honor to introduce to you our second speaker, and he finished his elementary studies at the Colegio de San Agustin in Makati and his secondary education at the Ateneo de Manila High School, serving as features and then associate editor of Philites magazine. He holds a bachelor degree in political science at the Ateneo de Manila University and recently finished courses at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, completing the public leadership program. He was the former lifestyle editor of Chalk magazine and previously a contributing editor and columnist of the Philippine Star's Youth section for 13 years. He is a proud millennial with a background in theater arts and communication, having founded two of the Manila's foremost theater companies, Nine Works Theatrical and the Sandbox Collective. At present, he is the representative of the 4th District of Pangasinan, sitting as the Deputy Majority Leader in the lower house. He is also the chairman of the Special Committee on the Creative Industry and Performing Arts. In addition, he is also a member of numerous committees, notably the Committee on Basic Education and Culture and Committee on Tourism, where he champions his culture and tourism advocacies. He is the principal author of the different measures, including in agriculture and creative industries such as the Magna Carta for the Young Farmers, the Integrated Urban Agriculture Bill, the Aqua Negosyo Program Bill, the Philippine Creative Industries Bill, and the Eddie Garcia Bill. With the rigor of both his parliamentary work and his constituency work in the district, he advocates for the multi-sectoral collaboration and expansion of livelihood in the rural countryside through various forms of tourism and agricultural modernization, as well as galvanizing culture and creative industry for economic growth and nation building. Again, ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Honorable Christopher Vera Perez de Venecia.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction, Mr. Monreal. Good day to everyone. First and foremost, I would like to acknowledge and greet the following people. DTI Secretary Mon Lopez, a fellow champion of the Philippine creative industries. Reverend Father Clarence Victor Marquez, Rector and President. Mr. Dante Clink Ang, Chairman of the National Book Development Board and President of the Manila Times, and also a DBA grad sem student. Associate Professor Emmanuel Lopez, Dean of the Colegio de San Juan de Letran Graduate School. My fellow speakers, Dr. Sergio Cao, President of the Manila Taytana Colleges. Alfredo Pascual, former UP President and now President of the Management Association of the Philippines. Associate Professor Cristina Castro Cabral. And of course, the whole community of Colegio de San Juan de Letran, the hardworking team of GradSem 2022 class for giving me this opportunity to be part of this webinar. Masantos ya kabosan at sikyo namin. Greetings and creativity. Once again, for the benefit of those who don't know me, I am Congressman Toff de Venecia. I represent the 4th District of Pangasinan, and I'm the chairperson of the Special Committee on Creative Industry and Performing Arts in the lower house. I'm also the lead convener of the now 60-member Arts and Culture and Creative Industries block of the 18th Congress, or ACHIB. Before becoming a public servant, I was involved in the creative industries myself, having been a film and television actor as a child, and then a theater actor, director, and then producer. I was also lifestyle editor of Chalk magazine and contributing editor and columnist for the Philippine Star's Young Star section. So I got to work extensively with various stakeholders from the creative industries, from filmmakers, visual artists, fashion designers, chefs, and many more. From my experience in both capacities as legislator and stakeholder in the creative industries, I realized just how important the creative economy is and how big of an impact it gives to our country. Before thinking about this seminar, I saw the webinar's PubMat online with the introductory quote from Jean Chatzky, which stated, "Resilience isn't a single skill. It's a variety of skills and a variety of coping mechanisms. To bounce back from bumps in the road as well as failures, you should focus on emphasizing the positive." I realized how this quote is aligned with what our creative economy advocacy has been in the past years, and hopefully it is something that it will experience in the coming years. I can understand why I was asked to speak on the topic of reimagining amidst the disruptions brought about by the pandemic. And you probably can tell that we do a lot of deep thinking and reflection as policymakers when we come up with the policies and the bills that we file. However, this process requires not only our most creative thoughts and ideas, but also real-life trends, narratives, and stories from the people who will benefit from these policy proposals. It requires research and validation through endless consultations. Our laws are meant to and should solve people's issues towards creating a better future for them. Although an arduous task, reimagining our country's fate is essential for change. Through times of crises and trouble, we may be able to rebuild through sheer resilience and perseverance, but without reimagination, we cannot build back better. In the short time that I have with you this morning, allow me to share our experiences and findings thus far in our quest to reimagine a better and more creative future for our country. Over the past couple of years, with the pandemic as impetus for prioritizing this little-known sector called the creative industries, we were able to prove that the creative industries constitute a significant chunk of our country's economy. Pre-pandemic data show that around 7.34% of the Philippines' total GDP have been generated from the creative industries. That's 4.8 million jobs generated, made up of about 800,000 regular employees and 4 million freelancers, most of which depend on the creative economy. In ASEAN, as per 2017 UNCTAD statistics of the Philippines, there was an estimated 85 to 90% reduction of revenue in the fields of film, performing arts, concerts and live events, and heritage sites, museums, and folk arts and craft. With arts and recreation being the most severely impacted of these sectors based on a study conducted by NEDA. The dependence of these sectors on viewers and audiences, tourist arrivals, whether domestic or inbound, and mass gatherings are among the primary reasons for the decline in productivity. An estimate of 30 to 50% reduction in revenue was determined in the field of TV and radio and traditional advertising because of the key factor of the restrictions on ad spending and shooting new ads, and of course that ABS-CBN went off air. The software, animation, game development, as well as digital marketing, digital advertising, web and graphic design fields only experienced an estimated reduction of revenue of 20 to 30% because of reduced productivity due to work from home setup and the increased digital marketing and e-commerce activities in some sectors that are offset by businesses that closed because of lockdown. Data gathered by ilostmygig.ph, which is a private sector initiative to aid the members of the gig economy and to be able to survey them and how the pandemic impacted them and their livelihood, a total of 250 million pesos worth of income had been displaced due to the pandemic. That is based on a survey sample of 4,174 people coming from various sectors such as visual arts, performing arts, design, entertainment, media, retail, and even health and wellness. If I may briefly discuss the Philippine creative sector, which comprises about 50 creative industries and counting, I believe this sector is at the cusp of two extreme possibilities. It will either fall through the cracks and drop further in the government's priorities, or emerge as one of the best in the world. Imagine that, the best in the world. And in the case of the latter, I believe that this sector has the greatest potential of helping our country get back on its feet. The shock of the pandemic was immediately felt by the sector, and many of the effects persists up to today. We could recall that the live event sector was the first to be cancelled, erasing 70% of live music's revenue stream and practically the entirety of the performing arts industries, which highly depend on ticket revenues and mass gatherings inside crowded venues for their income. With the closure of malls and physical establishments, the chains went up on cinemas as well. While the food and beverage industries were able to quickly pivot through deliveries, the technology for which being already in place even pre-pandemic, the same cannot be said of the film and entertainment industries. Streaming platforms have largely favored foreign content, and unlike food, film can be and has been notoriously pirated. On social media and on streaming platforms, creative content abound. These platforms have been big, especially for film and theater producers, actors, and workers who lost the cinema and the stage to COVID. While stakeholders don't earn as much in reruns as they did in theatrical releases and ticket sales, these shows mean everything to us consumers and help us achieve work-life balance and maintain sanity during a difficult phase of our lives. The pandemic also gave way to the release of 13 on Netflix, which has been dubbed as the blueprint for intellectual property ecology and the development of future Filipino intellectual property. Creative freelancing has likewise picked up where it left off before the pandemic happened and is now seen as the next key business process outsourcing sector, with around 1.5 million Filipinos already on international online platforms for freelancing, majority of which constitute creative work such as web design and multimedia content and editing. Animation studios that serve foreign producers, for example, are now refusing contracts and are up to 90% efficiency rates, even as our talented and sought-after animators work from home. With these examples mentioned, it is my firm belief that creatives and creativity are essential. Filipino creatives are also resilient. Can you imagine how much more they can achieve with government recognition and support? Less than 2 years ago, many of us had not even encountered the term creative industries, myself included. Regardless, I think it is safe to say that with the figures and scopes we have acquired from long congressional hearings and consultations with both the private and public sector, we have not been wasting time in looking into this untapped potential. Marami na pong nagawa para sa ating bayan ng creative industries, kahit na hindi pa natin ito nabigyan ng tamang atensyon at prioritization historically. When it comes to creative economy policy, I would like everyone here to remember and imagine 4 simple numbers. 2030. The year 2030 is the target year set by the Creative Economy Council of the Philippines and DTI as the year when the Philippines should have become the #1 creative economy in all of ASEAN. Paulo Mercado, president of the Creative Economy Council of the Philippines, has stated that this means being the best in terms of size and value of our creative industries, as well as the competitiveness and attractiveness of our creative talent and content in international markets. Practically speaking, this means that our country would produce the most number of graduates from creative courses, employ the highest number of creatives in our offices, and give the most number of opportunities for our creative talent, and to even use creative industries as a way out of poverty for the impoverished but talented segments of society, among many other economic indicators. This could also mean that our ASEAN neighbors would get to experience more about Filipino culture through the clothes they buy, the furniture they use, the food they eat, the songs they listen to, and even the vloggers they watch. The goal is to create an environment where creatives feel safe to create, not just to make a living, but also to live a sustainable and happy life. From a basic look test, it's not difficult to see how talented Filipinos are in the realm of the creative industries. Filipinos achieve so much in these fields with little to no government support. We produce the best singers, best actors, even directors internationally. Hollywood's best entertainers have Filipino roots. Our stories are told and listened to across the globe through digital streaming platforms. But if you look at the numbers, the story can be quite different. The Philippines' overall competitiveness in the creative field still needs a lot of improvement. As I've mentioned, our creative GDP contribution is 7.3%. And yes, it is significant, but it lags behind Thailand's 10%. Our 740,000 regularly employed Filipinos in the creative industries is way behind Indonesia's 15.9 million. Export data show that we are fifth in ASEAN in terms of total exported goods and services. But more than these numbers, we have also heard quite a handful of sob stories where opportunities for Filipino creatives were taken away by foreigners who appreciated the potential of our creative assets and at times even our own intellectual property. Our own Ilang Ilang, for example, is now the scent of Chanel No. 5. Piñatex, a special textile and a type of vegan leather that comes from the Philippines and was discovered in the Philippines, was patented in Indonesia. The Filipino animated series Trese was actually produced and created in countries like South Korea and Malaysia. It's not that we need to be greedy. It's just that these opportunities could have generated more jobs and could have lifted more families out of poverty if we had just been able to capitalize on them and seize them when they were right there in front of us. Instead, we have continued to look outward for opportunities instead of looking into our country's existing resources for a sustainable future. And even more recently, Filipinos pirating Filipino films, Filipinos selling counterfeit fashion and textiles, foreign firms copying the designs of our creatives, whether in furniture or fashion. These trends have to be mitigated at some point, and we feel that the time is now. As we celebrated 2021 as the International Year of Creative Economy for Sustainable Development, which was declared by the UN General Assembly, we pushed for major pieces of legislation that would shift our narrative towards a more sustainable creative future. I will talk about one of these policies that we had championed in the past year and a half. That is the Philippine Creative Industries Development Bill, which is what we believe to be the foundation of all other policies that would be crafted for the industry. Generally, there has been lackluster institutional support for the Philippine creative industries for decades. This may have been due to a number of reasons, which, may include low appreciation and understanding of what the creative industries are, and of course, on the part of government, varying priorities of different administrations and decision makers, among many others. Thus, what we saw as an initial point of intervention was to provide a legal definition of the creative industries, which we actually do in the bill. Here, the creative industries are defined as, quote, trades involving persons, whether natural or juridical, that produce cultural, artistic, and innovative goods, products, and services, where such goods and services originate in individual creativity, skill, and talent, have a potential to create wealth and livelihood through the generation and utilization of intellectual property. We intended to make this definition as all-encompassing as possible, knowing full well the breadth and depth of the business and practice of creativity. Over and above the setting forth of a legal definition, the bill also proposes a proper classification of this vast terrain. It identifies under Section 3 of the measure what these industries are first and foremost, breaking down the creative industries into 9 developmental domains, with a further disaggregation of around 50 sectors under those 9 domains. So what are these 9 domains? First is audio and audiovisual media. Second, digital interactive media. Third, creative services. Fourth, design. Fifth, books and publishing. 6, cultural sites. 7, traditional cultural expressions. 8, visual arts. And 9, performing arts. Through this breakdown, policymakers and implementing agencies will be able to identify which sectors must be prioritized from either an acceleration perspective and which sectors must be prioritized from a recovery perspective. The classification is also a means by which we ensure that all creative industries are represented and that no one is left behind. But knowing full well that creativity is a product of innovation, we can expect new and emerging creative outputs to be born every so often, whether as products or services. To anticipate these future developments, we provided a catch-all provision that takes into consideration new trends. Under the last paragraph of the aforementioned section, we included, quote, other such domains and industries as may be determined subject to the guidelines and criteria issued by the Council. We will rely heavily on the Council's wisdom on what future domains would be included in the original list of 9, and I will talk about the composition of the Council shortly. Defining and classifying the creative industries is the first step towards developing them. Only when the sector is defined can it be developed and promoted strategically. There's a saying, we cannot grow what we do not know. So we included a provision in the bill that mandates the government and the private sector to work together towards creating a Philippine Creative Industries Development Plan. Given that the Filipino creative sector has thrived throughout many decades without significant support from the government, imagine what more can be achieved if efforts are planned, concerted, coordinated, and intentional. The bill, when it becomes law, will mandate the DTI and the NEDA to coordinate with the private sector and create a Philippine Creative Industry Development Plan that would be composed of short, medium, and long-term goals for the industry, consisting of targets in areas such as value creation, contribution to gross domestic product, job creation, market creation and expansion, whether domestic or international, investment targets, and creative intellectual property targets. Another gap in the current setup of government is the absence of an agency or an office that deals directly with all of the creative industries. The bill likewise proposes the creation of a Philippine Creative Industries Development Council that would serve such a purpose. It will be composed of 17 seats, with 8 coming from government and 9 from the private sector, representing the aforementioned 9 domains. The government agencies that will sit as part of the council are the DTI, of course, as co-chair, the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines, the Department of Science and Technology, the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, the Department of Education, Commission on Higher Education, the Department of Tourism, and the Department of Information and Communications Technology. The Creative Council is also empowered to create ad hoc committees consisting of agencies and stakeholders that are most affected by certain issues being faced by particular industries. The bill also creates a permanent committee, which is the Creative Workers Welfare Standing Committee, in recognition of the key role that creative workers play in the creative industries. But while high-level decisions are made by this well-represented council, the bill also creates a national secretariat headed by an executive director, which would execute the day-to-day functions of the Creative Council, ensuring that creative stakeholders will have a dedicated office just for their concerns. The bill also incorporates the tax breaks as already being offered by the recently passed CREATE, or Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentives for Enterprises Act. Apart from the reduced tax rates for corporations, which includes one-person corporations and other MSMEs, it also expands incentives and tax holidays for emerging industries, which includes creatives. To lighten the load of our creatives, the bill also seeks to establish creative hubs, creative zones, and more shared service facilities that are geared towards the sharing of costs and resources among creative entrepreneurs and workers. But more than the sharing of costs, we also believe that these physical spaces will establish a more enabling environment where creatives can be even more creative. As another feature, the bill repurposes our existing Go Negosyo centers to become one-stop shops for creative freelancers and enterprises so that registering one's creative business becomes less of an arduous and daunting task. A creative startup fund is also being set up to give grants of about 50,000 pesos to creatives who are ready to enter the formal economy through business registration with a SEC, BIR, and their respective LGUs. A digitalization fund is also sought as to be offered to MSMEs who are formalized but need support in shifting towards digital platforms. Co-working spaces shall also be established so that creatives who work from home can collaborate in physical spaces when they prefer to, and of course, cross-pollinate ideas. A creative industry development fund is also set up, primarily charged with providing support to human resource development, research, and aid in times of calamities and crisis. The disbursement of this fund will also be subject to consultations with the stakeholders. The measure also seeks to establish a Philippine Creative Industries Development Month, which will be held every September to boost awareness on the developments and issues faced by the industries to the general public and decision makers alike. Finally, an important program that the bill seeks to institutionalize is the Philippine Creative Cities Network. The role of not only cities but of local communities in developing the creative industries cannot be understated. While policies and programs that have national significance have to be pushed, creativity is best seen, heard, felt, and even smelled and tasted at the level of the barangay, the municipality, the city, and of course the province. In all honesty, this process of drafting and pushing this bill has been very long, very arduous, and even contentious at times. The bill was formally filed in December of 2020, but the process of consultation goes all the way back to the start of the pandemic. The health crisis highlighted the vulnerabilities of the sector and made it more immediate to resolve them. We started consulting live events and performing arts, which are industries that are closest to my heart and most familiar to me since I am a stakeholder in these fields. And then we eventually worked closely with leading business support organizations from other sectors in coming up with an even more comprehensive legislative measure. Later on, as the bill started to gain more attention, we were approached by other groups that we were not originally connected with. And so we were able to hear them out and make improvements to the bill based on their suggestions and comments on the earlier versions of it. After almost a year of deliberations in the lower house, which included raising awareness of the bill to my fellow members in Congress, we finally were able to approve it on final reading in the lower house. The Senate has also approved it on second reading, but with 2 weeks of official Senate plenary sessions remaining in May after the elections, we cannot let up on our efforts to push for the bill so it becomes law before the current administration steps down from office. But despite all the hardships, it's not difficult for me to say that everything was and will be worth it. I believe that the bill, when it becomes law, would allow creatives to focus on being creative. Many creative industry stakeholders encounter difficulties in their respective careers that involve non-creative but equally necessary know-hows and skills that they may not have anticipated when they decided to pursue a path in the creative industries. This would include financial matters, business skills, dealings with different government agencies, and so on and so forth. Mandating various government agencies to fill this gap and help Filipino creatives with their non-creative requirements, I believe, would relieve some of the burden and would allow our stakeholders to focus more and be better in their craft. As I've hinted at the start of this message, reimagining is hardly a lonely pursuit. It requires thinking as a collective, compromising interests, and tackling difficult issues. Reimagining the future also entails a lot of risk taking. The policies that we churn out from the halls of Congress will not mean anything if we do not have the buy-in from individuals and organizations from the private sector and the executive branch of government. However, policies do provide impetus for change. And as policymakers, we are also empowered to lead by example. As we rebuild from this pandemic, it is my hope that we also take the time to reimagine what a better, more creative future will look like for our country. Thank you very much. Good day to all of you. And let us always remember that hashtag the future is creative.
Thank you very much, Congressman De Venecia, for that very illuminating talk. For your questions, you may email them to us using the address appearing in your chat box, and we will send them to Congressman De Venecia. At this point, on behalf of the organizing class of this webinar, we'd like to express our appreciation by presenting this digital certificate to Congressman Christopher De Venecia. To read, Colegio de San Juan de Letran, Office of the Graduate School, presents this certificate to Congressman Christopher De Venecia for imparting his insights as guest speaker in Bouncing Back, Reimagining, Renewing, and Rebuilding Amidst Pandemic Disruption, held today at Colegio de San Juan de Letran, Manila. Given this 19th of March in the year of our Lord, 2022. Signed by Associate Professor Emmanuel Lopez, Dean of Graduate School, and Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Cristina Castro Cabral. Once again, thank you very much to Congressman Christopher De Venecia for lending us your time and expertise.
Okay, we would like also to acknowledge the students and faculty of Parañaque City College, Manila Taytana College, Colegio de San Juan de Letran, Bataan, Manila, and Graduate School, Olivares College, Arellano University, Manila Times College of Subic, Letran Student Council, Cabancalan Catholic College, Ifugao State College, Malagasang Elementary Schools, and employees and executives from Top Serve Service Solutions Incorporated, DCS, and Manila Times. Moving on, may we call on Ms. Joanna Ang to introduce the third speaker.
Thank you, Sir Janelle. Our next speaker for today served as Chancellor of the University of the Philippines, Diliman from 2005 to 2011. Prior to his appointment as Chancellor, he served as Faculty Regent, UP System Vice President for Planning and Finance, Assistant Vice President for Development, and University Registrar of UP Diliman. He earned his PhD in Mathematics from UP Diliman and completed coursework for the PhD Accounting Program at Northwestern University in Illinois. He was hailed as one of the country's outstanding young scientists by the National Academy of Science and Technology in 1994. He also graduated cum laude at UP Diliman. He became a professor of finance at Cesar Virata School of Business at UP Diliman. He is a member of the Board of Trustees of Metrobank Foundation, UP Business Research Foundation, and the Development Center for Finance. May I present to you the President and Chief Academic Officer of the Manila Taytana Colleges, Dr. Sergio S. Gao.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to all our attendees. I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me. And I'm sure you learned a lot from the two previous speakers. So Ken, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
I understand that there are many students in the audience, so I'd like to share now my thoughts on the topic from the perspective of someone from the education sector. The food service industry was among the hardest hit sectors by the COVID-19 pandemic. On the other hand, the pandemic has led to the growth of food service delivery. For those restaurants that installed online orders and delivery systems prior to the pandemic, this has allowed them to survive the challenges the pandemic presented. This is an example of resilience in the food service industry. Tourism is another hard-hit industry. Travel restrictions have made the hotels empty, airlines grounded, and tourist destinations with no occupancy. In some cases, as shown on the screen, the tourist destinations also suffered from natural calamity. And this is about community resiliency. And we can talk about resiliency in several contexts. Have you experienced airport departure or arrival where you no longer had to pass through the immigration officer? You only had to use an automated terminal where you put your passport. This system has actually done away with the immigration employee. Immigration officers, elevator boys and girls, switchboard operators, these are just a few jobs that were made obsolete by technology. The Futures of Jobs report says that by 2025, 85 million jobs may be displaced by a shift between humans and machines. Those in the medical and healthcare sector will ask, and I'm sure there are nursing students, some nursing students in the audience, can this be done in the medical sector? In education, this is a question that has generated a lot of reflection and discussion. Next slide, Ken. Can robots replace teachers someday? For the longest time, many considered online or virtual learning as the future of education. We have been preparing for it. And then the COVID-19 pandemic happened, which fast-tracked the shift to online learning. We didn't have any choice. Teachers found themselves teaching to small photos in the screens of their laptops. Most teachers were able to cope and to adapt, to learn new things, but a few others dropped out or gave up. The question is, can we go back to pre-pandemic modality of instruction? Ted said that there's no going back. One event in Titana where I mentioned this, one of our faculty had this very good insight that like a worm that is transforming to become a butterfly, there is no sense if after we transform into being a butterfly, we continue to crawl. And this is one of our faculty from the Department of Psychology. So there's no going back. So let's recall at this time the definition of resilience. So this is the ability to bounce back. And we can differentiate between individual resilience and resilience by a corporation. The next slide defines future-proofing. What do we mean by future-proofing? This is the ability to adapt to change, the process of anticipating the future, be able to minimize the effects of shocks and future events. In the case of Singapore, they established or instituted Future-Proof Singapore. Not only is Singapore talking about future-proofing individuals and businesses, there's actually this notion of future-proofing the entire nation. And the way to begin this is to start with young children. Singapore, of course, is asking, can you completely future-proof business? And you can see at the bottom of the slide that the truth is you cannot really completely future-proof a business because of changes, continuing changes in the world. There are many resilience models you can read about. One of these is shown on screen. This business resilience model has 4 components: imagining your customer experience, refreshing your leadership, shaping your company culture, and reigniting your workforce. Please note that in this model, Please note that in this model, the key is the individual employees and leaders in the company. There are also many future-proofing models for businesses. The model on screen shows 4 strategies for the company or organization, including the willingness to grow, testing out new marketing strategies, going digital, and exploring hybrid workplace models. But can one really actually future-proof ourselves? Can we future-proof ourselves? How does one prepare for the future, especially with automation as a main driver of future business operations and processes? The future of jobs says that as technology takes on more of the workload, the most in-demand employees will be those who possess the skills that computers cannot replicate. That's the key, therefore, to adopt skills that computers cannot replicate. The Future of Jobs report lists the top 10 skills in the reports in 2015, 2020, and in 2030. You may read, you can look at these skills: complex problem solving, creativity, critical thinking, negotiation, fluency of ideas, originality. These are soft skills. And in the next slide, I'd like to ask the audience, let me do a quick survey. You can use the chat box to answer. Looking at the top 10 skills, which of those listed below do you consider to be your strongest skill? Please choose one, and let's see what will appear in the chat box. Creativity, active learning, creativity, critical thinking, quality control, originality, learning strategies. People management is very important. Problem solving, monitoring. Okay, I'm looking at the responses in the chat box. And I'm glad that there are a number of you that included being creative, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, of course, is very important. So we will look at your responses in the chat box later on. In the 7 C's resilience model, developed by Dr. Ken Ginsberg, he lists 7 resilience model skills. For example, you can build resilience by developing someone's confidence. You can build resilience by making sure that you stay connected with people that can provide a support network for you. Be able to feel that you contribute something and that you are somehow in control of what's happening around you. This is the 7 C's resilience model. In Singapore, they realized that the key to future-proofing the workplace is to future-proof workers or employees. That is future-proofing the individual. Therefore, this is my key message this morning. The key to business resilience and future-proofing is hiring the right people. And by right people, we mean those who possess the right skill set for resilience and future-proofing. The skills include both soft skills and hard skills. No? In schools, we teach the hard skills. For example, if you are an accounting major, you should know accounting, of course, auditing skills. If you are in IT, you should know programming, data structures. These are the hard skills. And the soft skills that were listed earlier were about communication, working well with people, critical thinking. The slide puts together the previous skill set for resiliency and proofing. You will realize that the skills for resiliency and future proofing coincide. So these are very important. The ability to communicate, to be analytical, be critical thinking, lateral thinking, thinking out of the box, creativity and innovation, leadership, character and purpose, emotional intelligence. These are the skill sets to be resilient and future-proof. With this objective in mind, as an educator, let me forward some ideas about what schools must do. We must strengthen STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. At the same time, we must improve general education, humanities, and social sciences components. We must improve on technical and professionals training and develop students' human potential and inherent human abilities. In order to, another set of what schools must do, we must change the way we give exams and other assessment mechanisms. We can focus on problem-solving exams, integrative exams, questions that are applied to real scenarios. Every degree program should require a capstone project or a thesis project. We must improve on students' research capabilities so that they can learn to gather relevant data and use them to have informed or data-backed decisions and provide activities, academic and co-curricular activities that challenge them to address and solve real-life problems in the context of groups and group work. In order to achieve this, a strong academic-industry partnership between educational institutions and business entities is very crucial. In the case of Titana, we take advantage of the special relationship between the school and other members of the Metrobank companies and GT Holding companies. Of course, it should be said that the government plays a key role in a successful partnership, academe, industry, government partnership. The partnership could take several forms, including scholarships. So business entities should be funding scholarships for students. They should also be funding an establishment of technical laboratories and facilities in schools. They should be funding faculty researches because it's the private companies that may have the funds for research initiatives. They should be willing to fund these faculty initiatives for researches. I'd like to emphasize the concept of adjunct professorship. Of course, we have faculty members who are resident faculty, and they teach our students in the classrooms, in the virtual classrooms. But adjunct professors are practitioners. They are experts in their fields that may be engaged by the resident faculty to talk about real scenarios in the workplace. They, for example, if you are in IT, no, your faculty may invite someone from an IT company who can talk about data mining or data structures, the way they meet them in the workplace. This is the concept of adjunct professorship. The company should also provide meaningful workplace experiences in on-the-job training, practicum, and immersion. And by meaningful, I mean, do not give them just token activities or assignments, but involve them in jobs, in activities that will give them a meaningful contribution in what you do in the immersion or practicum experiences. And nowadays, it is easier to do this. It's easier for practitioners to be able to participate in adjunct professorship, meaningful practicum, because many of these activities can be done using virtual platforms. So in summary, a strong academic, industry, and government partnership should be established for that schools can design very well programs that will train graduates and students to be resilient and future-proof. And once we graduate them from our institutions, then they will be hired by our companies. And as I said, the key is to hire the right people. If you hire resilient and future-proof employees, then your organization will become resilient and future-proof as well. So thank you for again for your invitation to be involved in this webinar, and I will be very happy to answer questions during the open forum.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jerry. So we learned a lot in your presentation. For sure, especially in our educational sector. No? So we will now open the floor for the questions. You may write it on our chat box, or you may post, or you may raise your hand here in our Zoom. Okay, sir, we have a question coming from Kylo Akla. If big businesses can afford to bounce back, what can you advise to startups whose primary concern is financial?
Okay, that's a very good question. No? Of course, your question assumes also that the big companies find it easy to bounce back. No, it's not really true. No, because you hear of big companies like Cathay Pacific, big airlines, no, grounding their planes, no, because it's very easy. It's not very easy to bounce back. No, but you are right. No, bouncing back requires a lot of funds. No, and the big companies, of course, if I may use the term, mahaba yung PC nila, no, mahaba yung PC nila, and also the big companies, especially those who belong to conglomerates, no, are diversified, no, and it's possible that some of their divisions may have suffered a lot from the pandemic, but there are those divisions who may have capitalized, no, on the pandemic. No? So it's a challenge for startups, no, for small businesses to bounce back. No, that's why it's very important that the small business owners are creative, no, and willing to look for ways to do their business in a different way, no, provide avenues for bouncing back. No, it's really a challenge, no, for small businesses. That's why pressure now for the government is to lift all restrictions so that the economy will be driven back. No, so that's how I will answer your question.
Sir, Mr. Dante Klink, the president of Manila Times, is raising his hand.
Okay.
Good morning, Dr. Kao. I was just, I noticed that in your presentation, you said that one of the things we need is to strengthen STEM, among the other things, of course, that you listed. I was wondering if you could comment on last year's PIDS study, which said that there may be a declining interest among learners in STEM. And so they were raising this problem with policymakers to address that issue. But DOST, I think, is also conducting its own study, which preliminary reports say that learners are indeed interested, but DOST's study will not be released in finality until later this year. I was just wondering, given your background as an educator and of course, you know, as a mathematician, right? How do you think government can make STEM more interesting to young learners? You know, PIDS was saying normal scholarships are probably not going to cut it. It may require some more imagination and creativity. But what are your own thoughts, sir?
Okay, thank you, Clint, no, for that question. Yes, I am a mathematician by training. No, I was a scholar of DOST. No, of course, noong panahon ko hindi pa yan DOST, National Science Development Board pa yan. No, but first, there should be agreement, no, that STEM is important. No, there must be a political will on the leadership, no, from the very top in the national leadership that STEM is important. But you will see, for example, in senior high school, STEM is just one of the strands. No. There is a strand on STEM, there is a strand on humanities, and so on. No? If I were to design or redesign the senior high school, I will make every strand STEM, right? Because I think that is the key to be a developed country. No, we must be strong in STEM, but we must start them young, right? I think from day one, no, there must be an effort. We must design the curriculum well, the educational system well, so that from day one, no, students, young kids will already be exposed to mathematics, no, to science, no, because science requires a mind, no, that wants to know, that wants to explore ideas, and this is very fertile in young kids because young kids want to know, di ba? So dapat doon ang umpisa, no? And I think there, as I said, maybe there should be need. Klink, I think there should be a legislation, no, that will say that in the education system, no, in the DepEd, no, there should be more emphasis on STEM. No? The problem in the DOST is that their intervention is already at maybe in the high school or in the college. No, hindi maaga yung intervention nila. No, but I think if we do not make this difficult decision, no, if our leaders do not have political will, then it will take a long time for the Philippines to catch up. Lagi tayong nahuhuli, lagi tayong pa-catch up, no? And yung idea ng young kids have no interest, kasi you build interest, no? If you base it on survey now or in the performance in test, maybe the conclusion is they are not interested, no? But di ba gano'n naman, you build interest, you condition their minds, no? So that they will have interest in it, no? Lastly, sa mathematics, I have to admit, no, many people are afraid of mathematics because of the way it is taught. So maybe if we change the way mathematics is taught, maybe if we change the way it is introduced to young kids, then there is hope.
Thank you, sir, for answering that question. We're down to the last question. For the other questions, we will just forward it to Dr. Cao. We will collate it. Sir, for the last question from Dr. Binuya from Marilitana Colleges. In the top 10 skills for 2020, people skills was number 1. But among the list in 2030, people skills not the list anymore. Would this be because of the emergence of more technologies that will limit the need for people management skills?
All right. The list that I showed you listed the top 10 naman, di ba? So maybe people management or people skills is not in the top 10 for 2030. But it will remain, it will continue to be a very important soft skill, no? Because even if we are, say, overtaken by technology, for example, in classes now, in instruction, no? We have a virtual instruction where you do not have face-to-face instruction. You can still develop people's skills, no? And that is a challenge now among companies, no? When you ask groups to work together, it is still very important for people to draw from their people skill management experiences to be able to meet, no, in virtually, no? So I think Dr. Binuya, still it will continue to become to remain as a much needed skill, no, whether now or in the future, no? Di ba, when you watch movies like Star Trek, mga futuristic movies, you don't see the characters move in a group, no? They work as a group. And these are futuristic ideas, no? So in the future, you will still need to be able to communicate, no, and to work with groups.
Okay, thank you, sir, for answering those interesting questions. At this stage, on behalf of the organizing class of this webinar, we'd like to express our appreciation by presenting this digital certificate to Dr. Jerry Cao. Let me read the contents. Colegio San Juan de Letran, Office of the Graduate School, presents this certificate to Dr. Sergio S. Cao for imparting his insights as guest speaker in Bouncing Back, Reimagining, Renewing, and Rebuilding Amidst Pandemic Disruption, held today at the Colegio de San Juan de Letran, Manila, given this 19th of March in the year of our Lord, 2022. Signed by Associate Professor Emmanuel Lopez, Dean of Graduate School, and Vice President of Academic Affairs, Dr. Cristina Castro Cabral.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, din, sir. May we request, sir, for a photo op? The actual certificate with special tokens of appreciation will be delivered to your officer. Ako na magdadala, sir. Once again, thank you very much, Dr. Jerry Cao, for lending us your time and expertise.
Thank you very much. God bless and protect us all.
Thank you, sir. At this point, may we call Ms. Rowena Jocares to introduce our third speaker.
Good morning. So our last speaker is a Filipino international development banker and finance expert. He graduated valedictorian at the University of Santo Tomas High School and cum laude at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. He then finished his MBA at the same institution and was awarded an honorary Doctor of Laws degree at UP Manila in 2020. He is a former member of the UP Board of Regents, the university's highest policy-making and governing body, representing the alumni, just before he was elected as the 20th president of the University of the Philippines, the first non-faculty member to hold the position. Now, he is the president of the Management Association of the Philippines. I present to you our guest speaker, Dr. Alfredo E. Pascual.
Thank you for that kind introduction. Greetings to all. Let me share my screen. See my...
Not yet, sir.
Not yet?
Not yet, sir.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir. That's good, sir.
Again, greetings to everyone. This morning's forum is about bouncing back from pandemic disruption, a process that the program organizers chose to begin with reimagining, followed by renewing, and finally rebuilding. I've been tasked to discuss the tail end, or more accurately, planning the pursuit of the tail end. Rebuilding is similar to the recently popular expression, building back better, a holistic concept that uses post-disaster reconstruction and recovery as an opportunity to improve a community's or a country's physical, social, environmental, and economic conditions in order to create a more resilient place in an effective and efficient manner. Actually, the phrase "build back better" first gained prominence as an umbrella term or terminology for disaster relief efforts following the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. Given the impending national elections, any rebuilding strategy or plan we devise will essentially be for the next generation to consider and adapt. It is in that light that I'm going to present to you my thoughts on this, but I'll do it in the context of what we call Dream Philippines 2046, a long-term roadmap for building and rebuilding the country that we as a people aspire. The year 2046 is approximately 23 years away. Maybe most of our attending students here will be definitely around at that time. And this year marks the centennial of our current republic. Dream Philippines is an advocacy of the Center for Excellence in Governance, or CEG, which is jointly owned by the Institute of Corporate Directors, ICD, and the Institute for Solidarity in Asia, or ISA. As you may know, ICD is a proponent of good corporate governance, whereas ISA is a proponent of good public governance. I am a member of both the ICD and the ISA boards of directors, or boards of trustees. And I'm also part of a 70-person task force that is currently putting together the Dream Philippines 2046 roadmap, which at this time is still in the works. When completed, within the next few weeks, the roadmap will be presented to the presidential candidates for consideration by the next administration, depending on who wins the election. The Dream Philippines roadmap is based on the performance governance system, which is a local adaptation of the balanced scorecard developed at the Harvard Business School. It is a performance management and measurement that aims to translate organizational goals into breakthrough results guided by a set of performance indicators and matrices. Given the time limitation I have in this forum, I cannot possibly cover the details or all the details of the proposed roadmap, which is actually still work in progress, as I said. We have yet to input specific initiatives, actions, and programs to meet the stated strategic objectives and the matrices for measuring achievement. What I will do is to give illustrative initiatives related to selected strategic objectives. As you may see on the slide, this is the Dream Philippines 2046 roadmap. What is the core value of this roadmap? It is for the transformation of the Philippines and the comprehensive development of the Filipino, by the Filipino, and for the Filipino. From Dream Philippines 2046, we expect socioeconomic impact in three measures: productivity, growth, and equity. Productivity is the driver of competitiveness, our competitiveness as a country and as an economy. Thus, productivity must be a primordial area of concern for us. It provides the basis for our capacity and actual ability to grow at a high, respectable rate in real terms, more like 10 to 12% per year, rather than half that rate at which we have been growing. Regarding growth, it is true that economic growth is not everything. It should not be our only area of concern for our people's development. There are many other areas we should be concerned about, but take note that without growth, we cannot properly attend to those other areas and make significant progress in them. We need growth to meet the needs of our growing population. We need growth to raise the standards of living of all Filipinos. Equity has been our long-standing cry as a people, that there will no longer be poor people with us, because we shall have moved more than 95% of families across and way beyond the poverty line. Moreover, due to a much deeper sense of social responsibility, the gap between the haves, those who have more in life, and the have-nots, those who have less in life, should begin to narrow considerably. Let me now talk about the Dream Philippines 2046 Governance Charter. There are three elements in the charter: vision, mission, and values. What is our vision? By 2046, we shall enjoy a strongly rooted, stable, and comfortable lifestyle, secure in the knowledge that we have enough for our daily needs and unexpected expenses, and that we can plan and prepare for our own and our children's future. Our families shall live in a place of our own, and we have the freedom to go where we desire, protected and enabled by a clean, efficient, and just government that deals with the people equitably and fairly. This vision has been adopted from the NEDA Ambisyon Natin 2040. How about the mission? We, the Filipino people, implore the aid of Almighty God as we seek to build a just and humane society, establish a government that shall promote the common good, conserve and develop our patrimony, secure the blessings of independence and democracy under the rule of law, and secure a regime of truth and justice, love and freedom, equality and peace. This mission has been adopted from the 1987 Constitution of the Philippines. So clearly, this vision and mission is commonly accepted in our country because they are in our official documents. What about the values? These are the values that will guide us. Makadiyos, love of God. Makabansa, love of country and community. Makatao, respect for the dignity of the individual and love of family. Makakalikasan, protection of God's other creations. Again, these values were adopted from the Philippine passport. If you look at your Philippine passport, these are the values written on one of the pages of the passport. This next slide shows a portion of the scorecard for Dream Philippines. Shows you the strategic objectives, the strategic facets and strategic priorities, as well as the strategic objectives. Still blank are the spaces for proposed initiatives, action, and program, and proposed measure or metric. The scorecard for Dream Philippines has 3 categories, 8 facets, 16 strategic priorities, and 28 strategic objectives. We plan to identify 140 initiatives and actions in all the strategic objectives or to achieve the 28 strategic objectives. This slide shows an overview of the 8 facets and 16 strategic priorities of Dream Philippines, whereas this slide presents a summary of the 28 strategic objectives. We will now go into some details of this scorecard. Let's start with the first category, which is the foundational category, and there are 3 facets here. First, the political facet, and there are 2 strategic priorities. Strategic priority 1, key government and private entities, particularly the publicly listed companies, pursue transformation roadmaps on their own. So each one. Strategic priority 2, fairness, accountability, transparency, good governance, and social responsibility are observed in the transformation roadmaps of those entities. There are strategic objectives under this facet of the political facet. Strategic objective 1 is strengthen, integrated, and harmonize political institutions to build ethical, strong, professionalized, capacitated, and accountable political institutions that are flexible, efficient, and able to capture complexity in the process and have foresight in addressing risks, especially security and disaster risk. Second objective, matured electoral process and civic consciousness to create a politically mature national environment where the electorate are aware and conscious of their freedom, duty, and responsibility towards the common good. Objective 3, stable national peace and security, to be a nation that is peaceful, orderly, and just, and that is secure from internal and external threats. Under foundational category, second facet, socio-cultural. Priority number 3 overall is whole of nation approach through families, schools, public and private institutions in promoting responsible citizenship. Priority 4, responsible citizenship advocacies. Feature personal dignity, common good, solidarity, participatory decision-making, and shared responsibility. Objective 4 is deep sense of patriotism. Objective 5, strong family institution and quality of life. Objective 6, preservation of rich cultural heritage and diversifying Filipino identity. Still under the foundational category, we have the third facet, moral, spiritual, and there are 2 priorities here. Priority 5 overall, freedom in the practice of faith, which unites moral precepts with performance of duties in life and work. Priority 6, special importance in performance of duties is given to personal integrity, fairness, discipline, and courage. Under this facet, we have objective 7, values-based society anchored on social justice and responsible citizenship. Objective 8, deep spiritual, ethical, and moral foundation and promote servant leadership. Objective 9, human rights, religious freedom, and the spirit of enterprise. Let's now go to the second category of resources. There are 2 facets here. Fourth facet is human resources. Priority 7 under human resources says sustained growth of population is above the replacement rate. In other words, you will continue to grow the population, but manage. We will not suffer the same decline of population in the developed countries. Priority 8, priority investment in education, lifelong learning, using certification programs for all people. Objective 10, universal healthcare. To fully implement the laws and regulations for improved coverage, quality, and affordability of healthcare for all, particularly because of our growing aging population, and to create a conducive environment for the pursuit of personal well-being and growth. Now, for this objective, let me propose a few actions or initiatives, because this is an area which is of concern to us during the pandemic and as we face the fading stage of the pandemic. Proposed action: clean up and fix the corruption-ridden PhilHealth, the very institution primarily tasked with promoting public health. Another proposed action: invest in claims, billing, fraud detection systems based on digital technology. I remember when I was in UP, we prepared for field health computer programs precisely to do this automation. Another proposed action, upgrade public hospital to increase their capacity across all regions and establish telemedicine facilities in major regional hospitals. Another proposed action, deploy extensively in public clinics of local government units. The UP develop community health information technology system, or CHITS, for monitoring epidemics and other diseases, as well as keeping the records of the members of the community in the LGU. Telemedicine is also a facility that we started in UP PGH. Let me now go to Objective 11, continuing quality education for all. To reduce malnutrition, wasting, stunting of the young, and to promote lifelong learning with more appropriate, fundamental, and innovative approaches, which were being discussed earlier with Dr. Cao. I have two proposed actions here because this is also an area where we are in crisis. Proposed action, broaden and sustain feeding programs in impoverished communities and public primary schools, so that our kids will have full development of their brain. Proposed action, create a new multisectoral education commission as convened in the Cory Aquino and Ramos administrations to plot our post-pandemic education roadmap and tackle our ongoing learning crisis. We must look to the successful learning models of leading countries like Finland and others with superior education outcomes. We do not have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to find the match between our culture here in the country and the educational models in a country with comparable culture as us. Objective 12, peaceful, safe, and secure communities. Objective 13, promotion of science, technology, engineering, math, or STEM, and dual vocational training with a strong values component. To select, prepare, develop, equip, and retain teachers with science, technology, engineering, math, and communication teaching skills, who can also teach civics and good manners and right conduct, values formation, and to improve systems for apprenticeship for the vocational education track in the senior high school, including industrial, agricultural, fisheries, and forestry. Proposed action here, to add to what was discussed earlier, retool and direct our workforce toward technology, creative, and logistics skills. Proposed action, foster entrepreneurship among the young by deliberately easing the numerous bureaucratic burdens small Filipino enterprise must hurdle. We should not be educating people just for employment. We should train people to create their own businesses. But maybe they don't need to go to college like the successful entrepreneurs we know from the US, like Steve Jobs, and others. Okay, let me now talk of the second category, natural resources. There are two priorities: responsible stewardship over our land, marine, forest, and mineral resources, assuring sustainability, open partnerships, and use of socially responsible technology maximize their present economic value. Under this facet, we have Objective 14, protection, conservation, and judicious development of marine resources. Objective 15, responsible development of mountain mineral resources. Objective 16, greater attention to food security and sustainability. I will dwell on this a bit. To give priority attention to promoting agriculture, aquaculture, agroforestry, agribusiness by addressing the needs of farmer producers. Example, farm-to-market roads, credit, technology, agro-processing, economies of scale, irrigation, mechanization, R&D, etc., thereby directly impacting on poverty, mostly in the rural areas, also inequity and inclusiveness. Proposed action under this objective or to meet this objective. Restructure and broaden the scope of the Department of Agriculture. So we will look well, so the department will look well beyond the farm gate and take care of the entire food value chain from farms to final consumers. Malaysia, for example, has its Ministry of Agriculture and Food Industries combined. And Vietnam has its Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, really linking the farmers to the department, showing the much wider scope of their agriculture ministry's concern. In UP Los Baños, when I was there a few years back, we restructured the College of Agriculture into the College of Agriculture and Food Sciences. The college is now focused on bringing primary food to the market and its consumers, not just concerned about production. Proposed action, another one. Consolidate farm management through agri-industry cooperatives, along with contract growing schemes to achieve scale economies and higher value adding, and with that, incomes for the farmers, given their tiny land holdings of 1 to 3 hectares on average. And one glaring difference we have with our neighboring countries is our low budgetary allocation for agriculture. Now, I think about 1.7% of total budget against 3.4, 3.6, 6.5% for Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam, respectively. Okay, I will now go to the third category, infrastructure. And under this, facet 6, physical infrastructure. Priority 11, fast, efficient, and convenient facilities for movement of goods, people, and other supplies needed by economic value chains and modern life. Priority 12, other utilities such as for water and electricity, provide reliable, affordable, and cost-effective services. Objective 17, quality and efficient transport infrastructure. We need mass transit systems rather than relying on the typical jeepneys and buses. Water, this objective 18, water adequacy and security, ensure water security and access to potable water for all. I have one important proposed action here. Develop an alternative source of potable water for the National Capital Region to address our sole dependence on Angat Dam, which is our only source of major supply for water. Objective 19, energy sufficiency and security. I have a couple of proposed action here. Address the country's future energy security situation to ensure continued access to cleaner forms of energy. Proposed action 2, study the feasibility of using nuclear energy for power generation including the deployment of small modular reactors in island provinces with no sustainable or insufficient power source. Objective 20, waste management. Let me now go to facet 7, technological, digital facet. Priority 13, internet and other facilities required by digital technology. Priority 14, comprehensive and effective support services provided to startups, innovations, and risk-taking initiatives to favor the flourishing of entrepreneurial culture, as I pointed out earlier. Objective 21, access to technology for all. Objective 22, data-driven technology ecosystems for authentic transformation. I will highlight a recent experience we have in this area. We've all seen how the ongoing pandemic has accelerated the adoption of technological solutions such as digital transformation. Through digital transformation, national and local government offices will be able to achieve operational efficiency, accelerate service delivery, and reduce costs. Government processes can be made more transparent through automation, and the visibility of transactions and the risk of exposure will discourage corrupt practices. Let me use a recent and ongoing experience of a national government agency that is reputed to be the most corrupt in our public sector as an example. You will recall in the CNN Philippines presidential debate on February 27, 8 of the 9 presidential candidates said so, that this agency is the most corrupt. I'm referring to no other than the Bureau of Customs, an agency that has a significant impact on the business sector. 3 years ago, the Bureau chose the governance path and began to implement the performance governance system, the one I'm explaining to you now, in collaboration with ISA, our partner in doing this Dream Philippines. The Bureau focused on a single game-changing strategic priority, that is to make a decisive shift from primarily manual operations to automated processes. By now, or by the end of 2021, the Bureau of Customs had automated 82%, 139 out of 170 customs processes. Indeed, one of the most important aspects of good governance is digitalization. Objective 23, infrastructure. My proposed action here, very important, DICT must continue to build a national broadband network that can address the long-established problem of poor and costly internet connection, improve internet access and speed in the country, particularly in the remote areas of the country. My last, this is my last slide, category infrastructure, the last facet, economic financial facet. Adhere to professional standards, that's priority 15, priority 16, fiscal prudence and responsibility. Objective 24, competitiveness and ease of doing business. My proposed action here is encourage foreign investment in sectors liberalized by recent enactment of legislation described to us earlier by Secretary Lopez. Another proposed action, expedite the completion of the strategic priorities plan that Secretary Lopez also discussed. Objective 25, a production mindset. 26, strong economic fundamentals. 27, development finance for MSMEs. And last, 28, focus fiscal and monetary policies. Let me conclude my talk by just telling you that given that a new administration tends to replace almost all key government executives upon assumption of office, policy and program continuity can be a challenge to our democratic process. The powerful growth we need consistency. To achieve powerful growth, we need consistency and build up in development. Our newly elected and appointed leaders must be cautious about undoing a slew of economic reforms put in place by our post-EDSA administrations. With our socio-economic reform and performance, we have come a long way. If you will see our track record pre-pandemic and the recovery we are now experiencing. There is no time to waste in reestablishing the country's pre-pandemic momentum. What has been accomplished must be maintained by the next administration. We must put pressure on the candidates to say so. Rebuilding does not have to imply reversing the accumulation of policy reform. The rebuilding effort should prioritize passage of other necessary supportive socio-economic legislation, as well as the establishment of necessary structures and institutions to facilitate policy implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pascual, for that very remarkable and informative presentation. We hope that our future national leaders, economic managers, and corporate business leaders will support our dream in achieving our goals in all facets you have mentioned, sir, for lasting human development and an economically progressive Philippines in 2046. And we pray that it will come much earlier. We will now open the floor to questions from our attendees. Sir, I have a question here. The electorate right now is so divided. We think that this affects progress in the short and long term. What are your suggestions to unite the Filipino people?
Well, the challenge to unite the Filipino people will fall squarely on the shoulder of the winning candidate for president.
I agree, sir.
I think Click is raising his hands.
Sir Kling.
We can't hear you.
Wait. Yeah, okay.
Sorry, the host was preventing me from unmuting myself. Sir, you mentioned that continuity of policies is important, and I think many would agree with that. Have you raised that issue because you've heard something during the campaign period that causes you to raise this? I mean, are there any particular policies that are you referring to any specific policies that are vital to continue in the next government?
Well, Secretary Lopez has mentioned the recently approved laws and amendments to existing laws. They should surely be maintained. I hope we will not have a candidate that will be close-minded, ultra. I don't think we have a prospective president who will be ultra-nationalist, will close our borders, to foreign investors. We need foreign investors. We need their capital. We need private sector participation in the development of our infrastructure through public-private partnership. And I think there's a law being, there is an amendment already done on the PPP law, and there is, I think, another one in the works. There should be no reverses in this. It has been a build-up, as we have seen. If you see the development, the growth of the economy up to 2019. Even in the fiscal side, there has been important policies that have been adopted, particularly by BSP Governor Ben Jokno and his predecessors, of course.
Thank you, Dr. Fred, for that wonderful answer, sir. Sir, I have another question from the chat box. Sir, I have experience registering a new business to one of the government mandatory agency, and they make it hard for us to register. What can you say about it, sir? From Letran CBAA, sir.
Well, the ultimate solution is through digitalization. This should be done online, like Union Bank, the highly digitalized bank. I opened a bank account. It took me 5 minutes from my home. It was done. It can be done, and that has money involved, already. Now, putting up a business, it should be encouraged. In fact, my proposal is allow the entrepreneur, the small entrepreneur, to start the business without going through the formalities, because he's all alone. He doesn't have a big staff who will take care of his registration, his taxation, make it, free. Well, I don't want to use the term freewheeling, but free him of all the bureaucratic and stringent paperwork that is required by our bureaucrats. I think we need to train our bureaucrats.
Yes, sir. I agree with you, sir. Sir, for the last question, medyo personal to sir. Among the presidentiables, who do you think can best push for the agenda you mentioned?
Do you want to incriminate me? I have avoided, airing my choice. In fact, I have not made a final choice. And after I did so, I will probably refrain from airing it. Given my current position,
Yes, sir.
In MAP, there is already heated discussion, heated debate going on, among proponents of different sides.
Yes, I agree, sir.
But I have to keep the neutrality to be able to act as a good referee.
Okay, that's it, sir. That's the last question. For the future, for any other questions, we will just submit it to Sir Fred.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Janelle.
Thank you very much, Sir Alfredo, for answering the questions. So at this juncture, on behalf of the organizing class of this webinar, we would like to express our appreciation by presenting this digital certificate to Dr. Alfredo E. Pascual. So let me read, sir. Colegio de San Juan de Letran, Office of the Graduate School presents this certificate to Dr. Alfredo E. Pascual for imparting his insights as guest speaker in Bouncing Back, Reimagining, Renewing, and Rebuilding Amidst Pandemic Disruption, held today at the Colegio de San Juan de Letran, Manila. Given this 19th of March in the year of our Lord, 2022. Signed by Associate Professor Emmanuel Lopez, Dean of the Graduate School, and Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Cristina Castro Cabral. May we request a photo op, sir?
Yes, I accept the certificate with appreciation and gratitude.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. So the actual certificate and special tokens of appreciation will be delivered to your officer. Once again, thank you very much to Dr. Fred Pascual for lending us your time and expertise.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. So to formally conclude the webinar, may we call on our very supportive Vice President for Religious Affairs, Reverend Father Stephen Marie Ladja, for his closing remarks.
I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, sir. Yes, Father. Loud and clear.
Okay, Reverend Father Clarence Victor, Marcus OP, Rector and President, Associate Professor Christina Castro Galpral, PhD, Vice President for Academic Affairs, Reverend Father Raymond Fernando Jose OP, Vice President for Financial Affairs, Raymond Lopez, Secretary of the Department of Trade and Industry, Honorable Christopher de Venecia, 4th District Representative of Pangasinan, Dr. Sergio Cao, President of Manila, Taitana Colleges, Alfredo Pascual, President of Management Association of the Philippines, Deans of Colleges, and different department of colleges, teachers, students, and distinguished guests, good morning. First of all, I would like to thank Graduate School of Colegio San Juan de Letran, Manila, headed by our Dean, Associate Professor Emmanuel Lopez, PhD, for organizing this webinar with a very relevant theme, Bouncing Back, Reimagining, Renewing, and Rebuilding Amidst Pandemic Disruption. This topic reminds us that we were disrupted. We indeed suffered by the COVID-19 pandemic, but we resiliently adapt to the new normal. We find ways to build our country with effective strategies. This is very spirit of Lenten season, which Jesus Christ showed us during 40 days of preparation for his public ministry. He shows us the way, the truth, and the light to win the battle against Satan through fasting, prayer, and self-sacrifice. Yes, Jesus Christ suffered until death on the cross, but his holy journey did not end there. He resurrected from the dead and ascended into heaven. This is the ultimate good news of Jesus Christ, the real hope for his faithful followers. This must be our inspiration while working on full economic recovery and strengthening our business education in our country to nourish our bodies and souls amid COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. The core good news and values of Jesus Christ must be practicing in our daily journey, never stop working and achieving better bouncing back, more fruitful reimagining, stronger reviewing, and always keep on building our economic security and resiliency as one family, one community, one country, so that we will achieve our common goal, full economic recovery of our country. Arriba, Letran, Arriba, Philippines.
Thank you very much, Father Stephen, for that heartfelt remarks. Before we end this webinar, we have some special prizes from our sponsors to be given to some of our lucky attendees. May we call on Ms. Rowena Jocares to announce the winners.
All right, so again, good morning, everyone. I will now announce our lucky winners who will receive special prizes from our generous sponsors. So there will be 3 active participants who will receive 200 pesos each GCash, sponsored by TopServe and Sancelo Fragrance. And I know you are all excited. So these are the following 3 winners. So for the first winner, Jocelyn Deliso, congratulations. So please type present in our chat box for you to claim your prize. And for the others na rin po, kindly type present in our chat box. So congratulations po. For the next winner, Nicole Apas, congratulations. And for the last winner, for our active participants, Shaira May Litong. So for the next winner, so there will be 2 early birds who will receive again 200 pesos each GCash. Again, sponsored by our patron sponsors, the Top Serve and Sancelo Fragrance. And they are Miss Angeli Visconde and Mr. AJ Manalastas. Congratulations po. Okay, for our major prizes, sponsored by the PTC Aviation Training Center and Astoria Culinary Institute. So the lucky winners who will receive a training voucher from the I mentioned sponsors. So the highest number of attendees. So congratulations po from Letran Manila. Letran Manila will receive a 12-day flight attendant virtual training voucher from PTC Aviation Training Center worth 8,500. And the other winner po, congratulations, the Manila Taytana Colleges who will receive a hospitality operations virtual training worth 6,000 pesos from Astoria Culinary Institute. So to claim your prize, kindly contact Mr. Michael Monreal at 0945-839-1702 or email him at michael.monreal@letran.edu.ph. So again po, congratulations and thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ma'am Rowena. So congratulations to all winners, no? So we would like to remind everyone that the link or the evaluation link is already in your chat box. But kindly take note that the certificate of attendance shall be emailed upon accomplishing the evaluation forms. But before that, we would like to request everyone to please open your camera for the photo ops. Okay, and wear your best smile, please. Okay. So, are we ready, sir? Sir Michael, ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Smile. Next.
Continue smiling. We don't know what slide.
Ang gaganda, nagawa po natin mga participants for today. So, thank you so much for staying in our webinar. So, smile. Okay, next. Are we good, sir? Okay, thank you very much, everyone. No? So please check the inbox in our Zoom chat box so that we can fill up the evaluations. And also, we would like again to thank our sponsors, no, and partners. Manila Times, our official media partner, PTC Aviation Training Center, Astoria Culinary and Hospitality Institute, Top Serve, and Sancelo Fragrance, Letran APRD headed by Ms. Jenny Villar, the Letran Graduate School Dean, faculty and staff for the assistance and generous support toward this success of grad school event. And also on behalf of the organizing committee of this year's webinar, Mr. Dante Ang, Ms. Joanna Ang, Ms. Rowena Jocares, and our leader, Mr. Michael Monreal, and our ever beautiful advisor, Dr. Virginia Salonga. We thank you all for your gracing this event.
Now, may we invite everyone for the singing of the official Letran hymn.
Dinala si Quezon sa Maynila kung sa gayoy makapag-aral siya sa Kolehiyo de San Juan de Letrán.
Ang 75 season ng NCAA.
Winner is the team of Colegio de San Juan de Letrán.
Students of Colegio de San Juan de Letrán bag top honors.
Kampiyon ng Letrán.
Sa endgame kaya panalo ang Letrán.
Back as a miss from the Ant-Man Mark Cruz.
Alma mater Letran espedente, con escoles su gloria sin fin, y perfuman los labios con diente, con exhalas su aroma y jazmín. Orgullosos de ti mi historia, nuestras almas desollarán, conquistando tu nombre de historia. Y jamás olvidarte en el mágico Iden filipino fuiste antorcha de luz y saber, y a través de su augusto destino de esperanza serás rosicler, pues lograste según tu modelo tantos hombres ilustres formar, que semejan estrellas del cielo en la noche serena al brillar. Letrán espedente, con escoles tu gloria sin fin, y perfuman los labios con diente, con exhalas su aroma y jazmín. Orgullosos de ti mi historia, nuestras almas desollarán, conquistando por tu nombre con gloria. Y jamás olvidarte
Again, thank you very much for joining this webinar. This is your host, Junel Rafol.
And I'm Ken Iog, wishing you all the best and keep safe always. Syempre arriba, syempre Letran.